You're listening to the Naturally Noelle Show, brought to you by Noelle's Naturals, all natural products that really work. And now, please welcome entrepreneur, wife, homeschooling mom of 4, and founder of the Noelle's Naturals brand of products, your host, Noelle Talley.
Well, hello friends, and welcome back to the show today. I just have to say that I am so loving being back in the swing of sitting down in the studio with you guys and just sharing my heart and diving into these deeper topics and really just finding encouragement and empowerment. And we've had so many wonderful guests, and today's guest is no different. Today we have with us Ashley Homol. Ashley was a hairdresser and stay-at-home mom, and just found through those years of being behind the chair and pouring into the lives of women that she really wanted to step away from that role and move into a role of really pouring into women's lives in a very different way. So now she travels all over the country speaking. She does coaching. She does workshops and has a wonderful social media presence and lots of really encouraging posts that she does. And our conversation today really just was so encouraging to me, and I just really enjoyed it. Kind of took a different turn than I was expecting, but we really went deep into what it is to be a woman, to be a mom, and to find that vision and really just settle into who it is that God has called you to be as a woman. So I'm really excited for you to join our conversation today. Here we go. Well, welcome to the show, Ashley. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you because in the beginning of the year, I like to get a new planner and I like to kind of vision cast for the year and really just take that time to sort of reset and decide what my priorities are and where I want to go. And over the holidays, a lot of moms can kind of lose just that momentum and lose that perspective. You just get so busy. You get out of your regular routine. You're not eating the foods you normally eat, and you get to January and you're just kind of spent and just really trying to kind of figure out how to find your way again and get back into, those things that God has called you to do. So I really would love to just kind of chat about ways that moms can kind of find themselves again in the new year.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head that a new year just brings like a fresh perspective. So it gives all of us moms an opportunity to kind of vision cast, like literally take a look at this upcoming year and decide, who we want to become and what we want to do. And I think what can hit moms especially is, we just literally finished like this ultra marathon of December. We pulled off Christmas gifts. We got the teacher things. We hit up all the holiday parties, and then January hits, and then we recognized that everything was outsourced. And internally, we're kind of just like, oh my gosh, I'm dipping really low. There's this pressure too, I think, with the new year that we have to kind of decide right off the bat, like what we're going to do in order to gain this vision. The thing that I really love about the word vision is it's actually inner sight. It's not something we can fully see yet. So in the beginning of January, what I like to do is just kind of meditate in the things that I want to see come into my life, but be very patient with not expecting to see them visually off the bat. So January, I really like to use as an opportunity to kind of just resettle myself, not put a ton of pressure on myself. We as moms are really good at doing that. And just kind of take January as like a recovery month. Like you're exactly right. Like we can be like, man, I ate like crap, just simple things. And instead of it becoming something that like, okay, let's just reset, we feel like we failed already. And so to kind of leave that attitude in the year before and allow January just to the reset month where we can kind of like, okay, now I'm getting the sugar cookie. I mean, literally, I go through all of our presents, and this might sound awful, but when we get like candy, I just throw it away. Like, I just know if it's in the house, I'm going to eat it. So I'm trying to get whole new reset, and I just get rid of all that stuff and just kind of use those first couple months in the new year to just get my footing.
Yeah, I love that so much because as you're saying that, I already have fallen prey to that this year as I sat down and I began to think, okay, what do I want this year to look like? And the planner that I have has like a lot of different prompts and things like that and questions for you to answer. And I found myself kind of lost a little bit like, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. And honestly, I think that's a good thing, because personally, I do try to be very open-handed with what God has for me. When people ask me, oh, are you doing this? Are you doing that? What's next for you? And I have learned, I think I know better now at almost 40 than to say, here is what I will be doing, because God's plan is always so much better than our plan, and things always change and unexpected things come up. And for me to say, yep, this is what we're doing. I have this goal and I'm going to push for it. And this is what's happening. Yes, have goals. And that's good. That's a great thing. But being open-handed and saying, Lord willing, here's my plan. This is what we're hoping for. This is what we're going to try to do, but we're going to see what happens, because you never know. Everything can change in 1 second. One little thing can turn everything upside down. And if you are so tightly holding on to that plan that you had, when things change, you can really go into a tailspin.
Oh man, you are so right on that. And, it does say in scripture that the Lord has a plan for us, but it also says that by faith, we need to move. We need to do some kind of action. And so a funny story, last year, my husband and I, I'm actually 7 months pregnant right now. So this time last year, that wasn't really even a thought. And we had this urge to, our other little guy, 12, and we're just seeing so much space. And so we had this nudge to be like, we should just get like a small apartment. We live in right outside Indianapolis. We should get a small apartment downtown and just like live it up. Like we could rent it out to people. We're like, getting a little more free. Our son is just, has more flexibility where he just doesn't need to be coddled as much. And so we started dreaming in this plan. We felt this nudge that like, this would be a great idea. Well, then we got pregnant, and that not that plan completely failed, but what it did, it like opened our minds to perceive something different. And so we just diverted and we decided to actually get an RV. And we were like, oh my gosh, if we hadn't taken some action steps in this dream, this nudge we had, January, February, looked into it. Like we were looking into apartments. We weren't making any type of dramatic decision, but we opened the door. We felt God calling us to, get out a little bit more. And when we had the baby, we're like, well, there's no way we're going to have an apartment downtown, that sounds chaotic. And we were like, but we could get an RV, and it kind of flexed that same thing. And so I think God is always nudging us, right? But he is not one to reveal his ultimate plan to us, because it takes faith by action. So when we feel that and we start moving towards it and it doesn't turn out the way we think, instead of seeing it as a failure, we need to see it as faith and be willing to hear where the Lord actually directs us. And it's usually, like you said, into something far greater, but our minds would have been completely closed had we not kind of just fallen into this, like, what would it be like to have an apartment downtown kind of mentality. And so I think in our faith walk and our Christian life, it's so much about trusting that the Lord really does have us. And when we feel something, whether it's like, I need to lose so many pounds or whatever, and I'm going to do this and commit to that, if we don't quote unquote hit that benchmark, we sometimes then get so down on ourselves, instead of seeing no, now my son wants to go on a walk around the neighborhood. And I'm glad, because I've actually been going to the gym. I don't really like going to the gym anymore, but I've now flexed this side of me that's movement. So now I'm going to start taking neighborhood walks with my son. And all of a sudden he starts telling me all about his day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think that sometimes as moms, we can see when we don't follow through with our goals, quote unquote, as like, oh, it failed or it wasn't meant to be, instead of looking at the door that's more open, that God is showing us that because of this walk, look where he's taking us instead. And I think that all has to do with just, really gaining his perspective and being okay with letting go of ours.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten to the point where now I feel like I am only responsible for saying yes when I feel the Lord is prompting me to do something, and walking in faith And that's kind of it. That's where I take the burden off of myself. I do those things, and then how it turns out, that's not on me, really. I mean, as long as I'm walking, in obedience and I'm doing what I'm asked to do, and I'm not, trying to take things on myself and say, oh yeah, God, let me help you. I'm going to make all these things happen. And I start trying to push things. That's where things can go awry. But when I just take those small steps, one step at a time, and I say, okay, Lord, I'm leaning on you. I'm trusting you. Tell me what's next. And I walk in that direction. How it turns out is not on me. I've taken that pressure off of myself. And then what happens is when things go well, God gets the glory. And when things don't go well, I can lean into him and I can trust him that he is good and continue believing that he has called me to whatever XYZ for a purpose, and just enjoy that process instead of continually thinking of it as a success or a failure.
Yes, I totally hear you on that.
How do you think that, for moms really feeling, especially, in this world of Instagram and TikTok, and there are so many good pages, so many, just like yours, where you see people, you see women, really living out their lives in a beautiful way, whether that's, they've got the homestead and the chickens and they're doing all that, or, they're baking their sourdough bread, or they're getting those workouts in and they're super fit and look amazing, or, they know how to do their contouring on their face just perfectly and their hair's all pretty. Like there's all these things, you see all these people just really like doing things in a way that you're like, wow, I wish I could do it that way. And you can really kind of enter into that, this desire to, I want to be all of those things. So, going into this new year, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all those things. And you can't piece together all of the best versions of all these different people and think that you're going to be that. How do you think women can combat that temptation?
Yeah, social media is a very powerful entity, right? I mean, my generation, I'm 37. I feel as if we are the first generation of parents who are truly raising up children in social media, meaning like social media didn't just come out, like it's been out. And we've got like 9-year-olds asking if they can have an Instagram, like, excuse me? But I think what I have really tried to remember, and because it happens to all of us, I feel the exact same way. And I loved hearing this one time that, when you scroll on Instagram, you scroll through your feed, right? It's called like a feed. That it's called a feed because the enemy will eat you alive when you fall into it. And so when I notice I start feeling more like, oh my gosh, how does she do it? Or I wish I had that, or I need to buy this for my house, or now I need this, or, I can tell that it's not ministering to me well. And I also have to remind myself, bigger than me, if I feel that way, what am I modeling to my son who is growing up in a generation that is consumed by social media? I mean, depression rates amongst kids, cyberbullying is so extremely high right now. Kids are going to model our behaviors. And so what I tend to do is when I feel myself truly feeling that way, I have to have the discipline to either delete my apps. It doesn't mean I delete my accounts. I delete my apps, or I just unfollow things that no longer serve me. And, that's easier said than done. I wish I could just say like, oh, just do this, but it's a true action step that I have to be willing to take when I find myself feeling down and feeling like I can't do it all. I know that when I have space away from my phone, that I'm actually in the present, which the present is the only place that life is actually existing. And the enemy wants to keep us from that, right? So when we can kind of put that phone down and we can delete the apps really quick, then all of a sudden you start to watch your habit. You pick your phone up and your thumb goes right to like that click and you're like, oh my gosh, it's not there. I really have a problem. Sometimes we just need a few day break. Like we need to just truly get off the thing for a few days to get our footing about us. And so I encourage my women to do a social media detox a lot. And I think a lot of the times when we kind of go away, it makes our followers like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Ashley post all that. I wonder what I know it sounds funny, but it kind of actually regenerates the algorithm too. And so if you're used to seeing someone's page in your discovery a lot, when you're not on it as much, you don't really see that content come through as much. So I think when women start feeling that way, we just need to have a soberness about ourselves. And if we are doing something that's causing us to feel more bad or empty, or not that we're good enough or have enough, we need to have the self-control to say, you know what, I need a break from this, because if I'm feeling this way, I can't imagine the output that's vibrating in my home. And my kids are going to start unknowingly picking up on these traits when they are consumed with social media. So it's so easy just to delete an app and re-download it, right? And it's just enough of a pain to have to re-bring it back in to like really remind you, kind of like, hey, heads up on this. So that's kind of like a big teaching principle. I call it like part of fasting. Fasting isn't just food, but it's a big teaching principle in my coaching that I will help my girls with, is we need to fast from our phones, fast from the things that make us feel good instead of bring us more excitement afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think realizing what is bringing you joy, and that includes behaviors and habits and mindsets and things, we can get kind of caught up with making our home beautiful. And there's, this balance between being hospitable and having a welcoming home, and then, too much. One of the things I really love to do early in the year after the holiday, actually, we do it before the holidays a lot of times, is we'll kind of just do a purge and just kind of get rid of a lot of the things that aren't necessarily bringing us joy. Because for me, when there's clutter everywhere and toys everywhere, that's bringing me a lot of irritation. That's not a good thing. And so we try to eliminate those things from our lives that aren't really serving us anymore.
I love that idea. Doesn't that just feel lighter? Don't you like physically feel lighter when you actually get rid of things that are like in your home?
Oh my
that
gosh,
you don't need?
Absolutely. I think we got rid of probably 4 boxes and several bags of things before the holidays, because I know between all the family members, and our kids have several sets of grandparents, and everyone, we try to be minimalist. We try to say, hey, the kids don't need much, but inevitably too much comes in around the holidays. And so as a preemptive sort of purge, we always go through things starting around September, October to make space for the new that we know will be coming in.
Definitely. I love that concept. And I think it mirrors like declutterizing, right? Declutterizing your life, your surroundings, your social media, like all of those things kind of fall under that same bracket of like what sucks our joy out. And if we can kind of declutter some stuff, we will feel rejuvenated, right?
Yeah. So kind of going back to this idea of, vision and really just kind of finding yourself again and recentering, what would be some really just kind of practical steps that women can take to find that? Because I appreciate and love that you talked about it's okay if you don't have it immediately, if it takes time, but when that time comes, how do you kind of hone in on that and find that direction that you're wanting to go in?
Yeah, I notice with my own personal walk, I have to remind myself that in order to become something new, I'm going to have to let go of something that I used to be, or some old habits or some familiar patterns. And oftentimes, as much as we want new, we have a hard time giving up what's comfortable. And so when I have a little bit of a vision quest that I know I'm going on, I remind myself that I'm going to be leaving a lot of the familiar behind. Maybe it's a familiar way I used to cook for my family, but I'm really wanting to reestablish new nutrition in my home. Maybe it's, I want to start consuming more books and get off my phone. And so these things don't always sound like super sexy, right? They're not like extremely exciting off the jump, but I think that with vision, and for us to be able to grow into something so much grander, we have to leave behind things that we might be bringing us down, or things and ways we used to do things. And I think that there's a really cool self-discovery journey in that area too. Letting go of comfort is an addiction in our culture. Everything is designed to be more comfortable seats in this new vehicle, more comfortable blankets, weighted blankets, not just regular fleece blankets. We live in a society that's always gaining comfort, and it can really keep us bound. And so I try to encourage not only my women, but myself, and remind myself through becoming something new, we have to die to something old. So on this journey of vision, not that I'm saying it's not fun and it's not worth it, but being okay with like maybe you do need to get up 30 minutes earlier. And in the beginning, it's not really fun. But then all of a sudden, after a few weeks and then after a few months, you start to recognize that just by getting up 20 minutes earlier, you're able to really start your day off in a more patient way and you have filled yourself first. So we can have all these visions and all these ideas, but the thing with it is that it can truly fall to fantasy if we don't recognize that what really creates vision is moving into the uncomfortable and being okay with leaving behind certain patterns. And maybe something is having a more intimate relationship with our husband. Maybe it's truly like leaving behind those remarks that you just so badly want to say on the tip of your tongue, and just being softer and then watching that fruit come to life within weeks. And so sometimes I think we take vision and we see the mountaintop, right? Instead of seeing the next step to get to the mountain. And so rather than putting so much on our plate, I think it's just these simple, small approaches that what type of woman do I need to become in order to lose the weight? What type of woman do I need to become in order to be a more patient mom? What type of woman do I need to become to be a more purposeful wife? And these are the questions that vision invites us into. It's more so of what can I do within myself that will then lead me to my desired goal, not what is something I can put on a checklist but stay unchanged. So the biggest advice I would give women is when you feel uncomfortable, unfamiliar, even a little disoriented, you're in the right waters of gaining vision. Like it will eventually become clear. But right off the jump, it's a little murky.
Yeah, I love you guys had a conference last year and it was called the Do Hard Things Conference, which I love. That phrase is like a big homeschool phrase. We use that all the time in our home, do hard things. And it's funny, our boys typically are pretty good at doing hard things. They're pretty tough, but our third child, our daughter, is, she's a little more sensitive and she doesn't enjoy that as much. She doesn't enjoy a challenge. She's not as competitive and she doesn't want to push herself. And that's a conversation we have with her a lot that I'm trying to instill in her young is it is good to be challenged. It's good to see something that seems impossible and to do your best and to try, and then learning what you're capable of, learning how resilient you are and accomplishing that and realizing, wow, I did that. I didn't think I could. And here I am on the other side of it and I've done it. And that feels good. I'm trying to teach her that life is hard. Life is a challenge. And if we give up every time there's the least bit of resistance or it's uncomfortable, we just really will not become a very fulfilled person.
Well, and the method behind Do Hard Things, it's funny to hear you say so. My husband, him, and one of our dear pastor friends out in Colorado Springs, they host a conference every year and it's called Do Hard Things. We do ice baths. We, just have a great community of people who are like-minded, who are learning different methods in which that means. And it's a predominant male audience right now, but last year women are really starting to step up in this space because a lot of the times when you hear Do Hard Things, you hear physical, right? You hear it's the, take an ice bath and, do these things that generate you to beat your flesh because like you said, the world is not a soft place. But oftentimes what's overlooked is doing hard things is the hard conversation that you need to have with maybe yourself or maybe your significant other. Doing hard things is calling your mom when you haven't talked to her in 2 weeks. Doing hard things is finally forgiving that person who hurt you or going to that person and asking for forgiveness who you hurt. And so doing hard things is such a wide range of challenges within not only our physical self, but our spiritual, our mental, and our emotional. And especially with kids, like you said, like boys are just, there's just something about boys. on this pregnancy, we were going to wait to find out what we were having. But having a 12-year-old, I'm seeing the battle right in my face that 12-year-old girls are going through. And I told my husband, I was like, I need to know what I'm in for if I'm having a girl, because all I know is boys. And so we're having a boy. But what I have really learned about just being around my 12-year-old son, and, I have a niece, and just being in the schools a lot, is just the battle is so different for women. I think we can agree in our adulthood even, and as we're seeing young girls doing hard things, is so much more than maybe what a man physically sees, because a man is very like what hunter-gatherer, right? Where women, we're more like we see everything for what it is. We're kind of like I've heard it somewhere in the animal kingdom actually, that the eyesight of a male species only sees straight ahead because it is designed to primarily hunt, where a female species has this outer eyesight where it sees everything around, like watching for offenses, seeing that person coming, kind of like this really cool partnership between male and female. But for girls especially, I hosted a bullying workshop pre-COVID, and it was called Armor Up. And it was basically designed for girls who are being bullied. And the biggest thing is that my belief is with girls and with women is teaching them how to armor themselves up, so when the blows of life come, that they are prepared for them better, because we know they're going to come. And so, yeah, with little girls, maybe they're not as emotionally strong enough to go jump in an ice bath or do a hardcore challenge, but then being able to express themselves and feel safe and talk about how they feel, and maybe even words of affirmation, building their self-worth that way. Seeing mom just do things, I know for a fact, Noelle, that like if your daughter is watching you, she's going to have a spitting image of who she's going to become just by seeing all the cool, hard things you do, especially if she has brothers too. But I do believe that it's so different for girls because it's hard to teach them do hard things when they are just trying to learn their emotional just battle that they have. So I think too, a lot of the times, like, where our boys show us physically that they can do hard things, girls can also, distribute like a calming energy more so than maybe a boy can in a situation. Like they maybe have better manners or like different things like that, and that to be looked at as a hard thing. And so I think that the overarching theme of doing hard things is recognizing that women have this different kind of battle that men have, and like to our society is very masculine, and even it is what it is. Even like doing ice baths and breath work, it's this thing you have to do in order to earn this vulnerability and this solitude within. Whereas the feminine is just there. It doesn't need any type of entry point. The feminine can just kind of be able to hold that space. So in this bullying workshop amongst these girls, what I really recognized was a lot of their battle is just their own inner dialogue to themselves, or they don't feel good enough. Where a boy, they'd be like, man, I didn't catch the football over the weekend, So we can kind of clearly see this battle is so different of doing hard things for girls than it is boys, even just in the adulthood. So I just think that for our girls, especially, they're doing hard things might just not look culturally the same as boys. But at the same time, girls who are able to, get to bed ready and not make so much of a mess, where boys are all over the place, or they can calm down a little bit easier. There's different attributes about a girl that, are looked at as like just, oh, that's just a girl. When really it's like, if you try to expect a boy to do that, that'd be really hard for them. And that is it's just something that I resort back to a lot within my own self, of recognizing like, okay, yeah, my husband just ran an Ironman. He did a strongman competition. He just did like a 32-degree ice bath. He did like all these things. And I'm like sitting here in the house, like folding towels, like, geez Louise, like, what have you been doing? Like, it's so easy as a woman to be like, well, what's my hard thing?
And you were growing a human.
Right, exactly. So,
just creating life, that's all. Nothing big.
Nothing big. But yeah, I think feel like if it's not something earned, because our society is a very like, you got to go out there, you got to grin and bear it, and then you get it. It's like, then we didn't do something hard. But getting up in the middle of the night with your kid, time and time again, sitting there and holding space for your child when they cry, preparing meals for your husband, listening to him after a hard day. Those are all very hard practices that we women need to just rise up within us and be like, we are badasses, like we really can do hard things and be confident in the hard that we bring to the table.
Yeah. And I love so much that you mentioned that, because I feel like, and I've talked about this on previous podcasts, is that especially, for me, like as, the owner and founder and CEO of a company, like people can look at me and think like, oh man, she's a mom boss and she's probably just like pushing so hard. And honestly, I don't. I refuse to fall prey to this idea that I have to push myself the way a man would push himself. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong if that's your goal and you want to, be super successful in your career, you want to push yourself in that way, that's fine. But I think when you do that, when that's your main goal, you lose some of who you were meant to be as a woman and who God has called us to be as women. That doesn't mean that I'm barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. But what that does mean is that I don't have to put that pressure on myself. And some of that is because, in fact, a lot of that is because my husband has stepped into who he is as a man. And I have a husband, which I know a lot of women don't. And he takes that role as provider very seriously. So while I do contribute financially to the family, that burden is not fully on my shoulders. So that gives me the ability to, yes, push where I feel like God is calling me to. And so much of what my company is about has been, how do I serve women? How do I make people's lives better? And out of that has become this thriving business because people see that and they say, I want that. I want to feel better. I want to live more clean. I want to have a more wholesome life. And God has blessed that. But it hasn't been me saying, how can I be a career woman? How can I push this company and be this powerhouse? It's been about me first doing what I feel like women are called to do, and that's to serve and love and nurture and care. And out of that, this company has kind of become what it is. But it didn't come out of me saying, let me, just push myself as hard as I can. It came out of me being a young mom in my kitchen thinking, I need some, products for the stretch marks on my belly. Let me make something. And then sharing that with friends. And it became this thing out of hospitality and out of a desire to serve my family. And so I think it can be both. You can push yourself and you can do these things, but it has to be out of who you are as a woman and out of that design, or else you are just going to run yourself ragged and you will not feel fulfilled.
I think you're preaching to more than just women, but there was this massive pursuit when 2020 hit. I was a single mom for a while. And when you're a single mom, any single moms out there, like there's no end date. You don't know when you're going to not be a single mom again. You just know that you have to get up, you have a job, you have to come home and have to get and sleep, and you got to cook food, and you got to figure out how to pay for this and take them there and have your sanity. And so when 2020 hit and we had been married, my husband and I now had been married for just a year. Obviously, like that whole world shut down. I was a hairstylist for 17 years and I was a single mom. And so my hair career supported that. When my husband started his business, my hair career supported that. And then all of a sudden, it all shut down. And it made me recognize that my identity was very entangled with what I did. And where I got my highs and my validation was very entangled in this outside thing I provided. So when I no longer had it, I was in a very strange place. And in our society, we have to learn, it says in scripture, how to, be in the world, but not be of the world. Don't be the world, but we got to know how to pay our bills. We got to know how to like survive out there. And a lot of our upbringing is preparing us for that. And that I'm so grateful for. But there's that other part that is completely dismissed, and it's, who we are as a person outside of these things. And so I began this massive deep dive about like, what is woman? Like, why is woman, like, what is our job? Like you said, do I just stand in the kitchen barefoot, pregnant, and just, like have no other purpose? And that wasn't settling well with me. And so I found this really cool description in Genesis about God creating us to be a helper. Well, in our society, we hear helper and we're like, yeah, you got to do the laundry and dishes, blah, blah. But when you look to see the original language, the Hebrew word for helper is ezer. And when you find that word in the Bible, you see it occurs, I think it's like 16 or 17 more times. And it's when the nations of Israel needed to call on the Lord to help them. So there was this position that only he could fill as the Ezer to help them with the battle, to help them overcome. And the meaning behind it was always in a military reference. So this word Ezer for woman is like warrior, like helper, like we have a position that men cannot fulfill. And when we start seeing our identity through that type of a lens, we know as a single mom, if we're working during this season of our life, like that's what we're doing. That's what we have to do. But then all of a sudden seasons change and we have to be willing to untangle ourselves from the identity of necessarily working outside of the home. And I've been blessed so richly for the same thing with my husband to be able to, I didn't have to go back to work. He didn't tell me I wasn't allowed to. I just recognized that, man, when we kind of cut down a little bit financially and I was able to step out of the hair world and not so consumed with clients, I was developing a better relationship with my son. I was just so less stressed. I didn't have nearly as many migraines as I was getting. My body felt better. My house was running more smoothly. And what was really awesome is while I didn't stop working, it gave me this awesome space to take something that I'd done for 17 years, doing hair, remove the product, which was hair, and listen to women. I began creating women's retreats, and we've gone to Arizona, we've gone to Utah, I've hosted some Southern Indiana, and I got to sit with women in that same space, but I got to take that product away, and the Lord was using my gift that he didn't waste for 17 years. He refined for something bigger. And then it turned into women's coaching. And then it turned into public speaking. And now it's at this point where I'm a mom and I've been offered some things. And right now I'm just like, I have the identity to know that I need to serve my family first right now. And this speaking opportunity just doesn't work for me. This coaching client just doesn't align right now. But I'm telling you what, that pull, that worker pull, that career, that identity that we entangle ourselves with early on, it's an addiction because I'm not getting raises for folding towels and doing dishes and getting up late. But when I go to that career and I get a bump advancement and recognized in front of the whole salon, man, that dopamine hit felt pretty good. And I can take this cheap exchange for something eternal. And I think that that's like such a bigger battle in our walk as people, as humans, is to trade this worldly validation for being validated from the Lord. And when I have just fully surrendered that, it's been amazing to see him be like, but I'm still using you. And I've loved I love what I do more now than I ever did as a hairstylist.
You talk about doing hard things and sacrificing the praise of this world and sacrificing success and position and pats on the back and people, telling you how great you are in exchange for a more lowly position in the home where, maybe you're not as appreciated and maybe people don't value you as much. I mean, I should hope that, moms are valued, but let's face it, kids, kind of take and don't always give. And that's just how it is. And eventually one day when they're older, they'll thank you for everything you did. But, in the moment, it's kind of thankless. And so to make that change, gosh, that's hard. That's really hard. That's way harder than I think jumping in an ice bath or, climbing a mountain. I think those emotional battles are really a big challenge.
For me, girl, I mean, I had to get therapy. Like, it is what it is. I had to really go and I just remember telling my therapist, like, I feel like all I do all day is just fold towels. And like, that's it. Like, I do nothing. And I feel like I have no purpose. And then it got exposed that I was like, dang, I really, you see the condition, right? You see the condition of sin, the worth. You see more things. Sin is not just things that we do. It's a condition we're all under, and it really just sucks the joy out of us. And what I learned in that space was I had to just talk to my husband. It had nothing to do with him. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but I was like, hey, when I rearrange the closet, can I show you? And you just be like, babe, that is so great. Like, I know that makes no sense to you, but but he heard it. He's like, yep, I hear you. Like, I totally get it. And my husband is just the ultimate cheerleader. Like, he is great. I mean, I'll burn the freaking cooking dish and he'll be like, I love the burnt chips. It gives it an extra flavor, and like, but and to know that like I'm making a difference and that I'm recognizing that these seeds that I'm sowing, I mean, once my name is gone off this earth, no one's going to care what type of hairstylist I was. No one's going to know even if I write a book or my podcast I used to have or just all these things. But what's going to live on is the character that I established within my children, the marriage that they saw behind closed doors, the characteristics of a woman. And then they're going to be able to take all that I've given them and start on a different field. And I think that just comes with us just growing, and we always think it's a destination, and may I never fully arrive to my destination. I don't ever want to stop growing. I don't ever want to feel like, okay, now I'm here, because I just feel as if, our mission is never over. And so when we can align ourselves and really find value in the home, and I'm just going to be honest. It was a transition. Transition is never fun. When the Israelites left Egypt, they craved going back because they at least had onions and garlic, but they were oppressed. I craved going back to the salon, even though I was run into the ground and it was just not healthy because it was familiar. And so it took me a couple years to truly transition over. And I just had to have some support, and it's now given me this relatability with women that if you feel that way right now, like, I hear you. I mean, it is not easy, but once it's found, it's like, I even told my husband, like, you better up your life insurance policy because there ain't no way I'm going back to work if anything happens. Like, I am officially in this lifestyle. I love it. Like, I have such pride now in like my home and cleaning it and arranging things and cooking. And if 5 years ago me would have heard this, she would have just been like, okay, sure. So it really can happen. It's just kind of what I was talking about earlier, vision, like being okay with the discomfort and disorientation of God taking you through the desert, taking you through the wilderness to really then get to a promised land that you never even knew existed.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think, honestly, that as we kind of like are searching for the answer to that question of like, how can moms find vision? Like, how can they sit down and look at their year and say, like, where is it that I want to be? I think maybe it's less about specific goals and more about like, who do I want to become? How do I want to continue to grow? What I want to be at the end of this year is a different person than I am today. I always want to be new and different and changing. I always want to be growing and better. And I don't always know exactly what that looks like. I just know I always want to be going forward. And maybe that's the goal is I don't know where I will be, but I wanted to be somewhere new and always somewhere better than where I am today.
Yes. Yes. And our hopes and dreams are not just discarded. They're there to motivate us. And I think that in order for us to harness, like truly, like if you're thinking of you're talking about living on a farm. If you're talking about truly harnessing an animal, the strength it takes to do that requires the person behind the harness. So as we see these dreams out there, we should continue to want them and desire them. The Lord's put them there for a reason, but we need to be able to look at ourselves and just say, if I want to be a healthy person, is this self-sabotage I'm talking to myself really going to take me there? Is this, eating Doritos late at night, is that really going to get me to my desired weight? Is me drinking caffeine all day, every day, instead of just replenishing some with water, is this going to really even get me closer to harnessing this vision? Because we can get the dream, we can get it, but will we be able to sustain it? And so I think that the whole concept with dreaming and vision and all these things, it's always a call to more of an inner sight, to more of who we must become in order to obtain and to live out and to manage these dreams that we have. And so that is my number one goal, and is to every year reassess, kind of not look back in the past with like guilt the way that, the enemy wants us to, but reassess like, okay, this year, I really got that nudge last year. Now my son's at this age. Now, okay, I'm going to really try this kind of approach with him instead. And just truly start to just watch yourself transform. And I think what really will surprise us all is these dreams and hopes just all of a sudden just come, because we are now a person able to handle them. And I would just really encourage women out there to ask yourself just simplest of questions like, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want this, I want that. Okay, what is one small step you can take in order to see with new vision? What is one small step deep down is not good for you? Scrolling, late at night. Maybe at night, that's just the one thing you need to do. It's just one small step at night. You need to decide from 7 o'clock on, my phone goes away. Like, back in the day when the parents took the phone off the hook, the phone gets taken off the hook. Put that phone somewhere else, delete the app, do what you got to do, but decide in some way, shape, or form to start small, because you cannot obtain the big if you're not taking those first steps.
Thank you so much. I feel like this is just going to be so encouraging for moms, and I just appreciate you so much. I feel like we kind of went all over the place, but I think it all really connects to just kind of this overarching theme of really just surrendering and letting go and really just kind of allowing yourself to be who God has called you to be.
Totally, 100%. And Noelle, I just want to tell you thank you so much for following after your calling, because my whole family, including my son, we use your elderberry. My son has very sensitive skin to the point where he cannot really use any type of lotions or anything. And that tallow, he has it right next to his bed. He uses it all the time. And I cannot wait to use my postpartum kit that you have created for after the baby comes. And I'm just so grateful to know that you trusted that within yourself, because it has blessed our family. And I just really do love your product. So thank you for having me, but also thank you for just being awesome.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Naturally Noelle Show, empowering you to live a more natural life, one step at a time.